Hello, this is Lindsay Konzak, editor of Modern Distribution Management. I'm here with Janelle Stelton-Holtmeyer, associate editor of MDM. We recently spoke with members of the MDM Editorial Advisory Board about trends and issues they are facing in their businesses and seeing in the overall distribution industry. These conversations, along with other interviews we've done throughout the past year and responses to our recent MDM Reader Survey, have provided Janelle and I with some great perspective on top distributor concerns, trends, and strategies going into 2012. Thank you to everyone who contributed. Janelle, let's kick our discussion off with the biggest issue of the past couple of years, the economy. I like how Ted Cowie of Elvex, a safety equipment manufacturer and importer and an MDM Advisory Board member, framed this issue.
It's become, over the last couple of years, one of those 800-pound gorillas that's always in the room. You learn how to keep a watchful eye on it and try and pay attention and discern what direction it's headed, but at the end of the day, you still have to get on with your business and figure out how to grow, regardless of what's happening. We're still seeing some cautiousness. In general, 2011 has actually been a very good year for most safety distributors as well as safety equipment manufacturers in the channel, and I can't necessarily point to any particular reason why. I mean, you certainly can't argue that employment is way up, which, at the end of the day, PPE is worn by workers. There hasn't been any big regulatory shifts that have all of a sudden increased the requirements from any baseline as to what's, needed on the job. I think the only other explanation I have might be looking at the inventory to sales ratio numbers that got pretty low in 09 and early 10 as, everybody really pulled back to conserve cash and figure out how to weather the storm. And once you come out of that, more collectively, more and more distributors are maintaining lower inventory, so therefore the real demand on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis is what we're seeing in sales. So at least domestically, and then in our case, some of the international markets continue to be areas where economic growth is still pretty sound. Worker growth is going along with that.
We've seen growth over the past year, but the biggest wild card lately has been Europe's economic troubles. Distributors are growing more concerned about how the global economy will affect the U.S. in such a sensitive time. Some of the concern is sector-specific. Companies serving construction markets continue to be more cautious than those in other markets. Julia Klein, CEO of C.H. Briggs, a specialty hardware distributor, said this is the case for her company.
I had been more bullish on the recovery of the housing market. A year ago, I thought we would see some really strong improvement in 2012, but I no longer hold that belief, unfortunately, and I think we're looking at probably 2014 before the foreclosure market works its way through and people start doing new construction again. In terms of the remodel market, I think that has everything to do with the end user, consumer, homeowner, and the wealth effect. So if 401ks, if the stock market, if the world seems a little bit more settled and upbeat, then people will begin to put money into their homes again. And we've seen that sporadically over the last 2 years. So I'm hoping that that continues to improve. And again, on the commercial markets, we are relatively optimistic that healthcare and education, government and military will continue to be, if not strong, then at least not weak. There are a lot of projects that we've had in the pipeline for 18 months to 2 years that are coming to fruition now.
Bert Schraga of Bell Electrical Supply said his electrical distribution business needs some stability right now to continue growing.
I don't think that it's going to happen, but I'm concerned that we could go into a double dip. The economists that I follow, the Bouillot brothers, they seem to think, and I have a great amount of respect for them, they don't think that there's going to be a double dip, but if a double dip did come along, which I think could be triggered by what's going on in Europe, that would be very, very tough on distributors such as myself that had to really struggle to make it through the last one. We need a couple of good years to fill up the bucket.
What I've noticed is that with the exception of some sectors, such as construction, many distributors have seen high single-digit or double-digit growth this year, but they seem not to trust the numbers they are seeing. There are exceptions, of course, and as I said, it does depend on sector, but it seems like caution still pervades many companies' mindsets. Ted Cowie spoke about this.
You still just logically can't fully appreciate why would business in the U.S. be up 15%. If you're taking market share, if you know exactly where you're taking market share and you can attribute it to that, that's one thing. But if it's just a general increase in orders with customers that you've already been doing business with, when most of them aren't hiring, unless you happen to be selling into maybe the oil shale projects, in the New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio market, or out in North Dakota where they're doing some of that stuff as well. At least then you can say, okay, I understand. North Dakota's unemployment rate's 3.5%. So if you've got niche business up there, it's probably doing quite well.
There also seems to be a disconnect in what distributors are seeing internally and what they're being told, as Kevin Boyle of Industrial Distribution Consulting noted.
When you're sitting around talking to people in the industry doesn't seem to be reflecting what you're hearing in the media. And what you're reading is telling you that pretty awful out there, but business seems to be plugging along. A lot of distributors and manufacturers were saying things were looking pretty rosy. But the economy is terrible, but that's because that's what they're hearing in the media. So it's almost becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy.